for 15 years plus, and couldn't get it over 300 people until he came to grow, and then implemented everything that we teach, and immediately started growing. And in less than 5 years, he's running over 3,000 on a Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, man, when we getting it going, I just alerting some people that we're on, so give them a second to catch up to what we're doing. Man, I'm excited. I am super excited to have the man, the legend, the myth, Layne Schranz online with us today, man. So, hey, man, thank you for taking just a few minutes to talk to me and share with my followers just kind of who you are and what you do. So people can watch it later. I'll share it on some different platforms. But, man, let's just kind of start off a little bit about you. Tell us about who is Layne.
Well, thanks, Ramone. I wish I was as excited about me as you are about me. But I call myself a tow truck driver from Colorado. I grew up in Colorado Springs. My junior year in high school, I was invited by my best friend to go to a youth group. Up until that point, I loved God, but I hated church, and I avoided his church, actually, because I thought they were crazy. And I finally went with him, and for the first time saw teenagers that loved Jesus more than I did. And I was drawn in and completely blown away, and really just dove all in. And youth pastor that was leading that first service I was at, his name is Chris Hodges. And so that was just over 29 years ago that I walked into that youth group, and my life was forever changed, and began to serve and lead. And he began to invest in me for several years. He ended up leaving that church in Colorado Springs, going back to his hometown of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and a church called Bethany. And I stayed in Colorado Springs, continued to serve at that church as a volunteer youth pastor for basically 7 years. He was gone for 7 years, and then came through Colorado Springs to raise money to plant Church of the Highlands in Birmingham. And he stayed at our house and shared his story of being called to plant Highlands with my wife and I. We felt immediately called to leave Colorado Springs and go to Birmingham, which, if you've ever been in Birmingham or been in Colorado Springs, you know that you don't ever want to leave that place. It's beautiful, right in front of the Rockies. It's where the Garden of Gods is, and Pikes Peak.
Come there.
My family and all that. And so it obviously was God for us to leave there and move to Birmingham. He couldn't pay us, so we actually had to raise our support like a missionary, which people in Colorado treated Alabama like it might as well have been Africa. So they gave money and thought we were crazy. And we raised a year's salary, went to work at Highlands the first year. I was the only staff member at the church for the first 13 months.
Okay, all right, slow down. You got to get these principles across. So you met your current pastor.
Yes, my boss, Pastor Chris Hodges. Yeah.
Pastor Chris Hodges, Church of the Highlands. Fantastic church. Colorado Springs.
Yes, he was the youth pastor there in the late 80s, early 90s.
He went back to Bethany. Now, Bethany, tell us a little bit, because I just want to slow down. Bethany, powerhouses, pastors have come out of Bethany. So, like,
tell me
about Bethany, and who are some of the people that came out of Bethany? Because it's like
so really, Brother Roy Stockstill was, I don't know if you call him the founding pastor, but he pastored it for decades, then handed it to his son, Brother Larry Stockstill, who pastored it for a couple decades, and he has now since handed it to his son, Jonathan Stockstill.
Yeah.
But over those years, pastors like Pastor Rick Bezet, Pastor Chris Hodges, several other great pastors have pastored at Bethany. Casey Hennigan. There's just a long list of guys that used to be there. And it's just a great sending church. And Pastor Chris felt called in 2000 to go plant a church in Birmingham, Alabama. Wow. And so he moved to Birmingham December 26, 2000. And they did 21 days of prayer and fasting in January, and then launched Church of the Highlands on February 4th, 2001.
Now, y'all still do that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Every year?
Every year. Yeah.
21 days of prayer and fasting. Fantastic. Now you said something. So my book is called It Takes Two, Who is Helping You Lead?
Yes.
And it's coming out next month. So one of the things I felt called to do was to just provide some some tools, some resource for people who are getting into these roles of executive leaders, maybe working for staff, helping their pastors start a church or grow the church. Now, you just said something that said you were the first staff person, but how did you get your salary? Explain that. Slowly explain
Yeah,
that.
so Pastor Chris, in launching Church of the Highlands, he needed all the dollars he could get to rent a high school, to buy a screen and a projector and some instruments and some toys. And so he didn't have the finances available out of the launch budget of the church to pay for a staff member. He could barely pay himself. And so we just felt so called to be here, my wife and I, Rachel, that we decided that we would raise our support like a missionary would for our first year. And Pastor Chris was very gracious and said, look, if you only raise 10 months, I'm sure the church will be successful enough that we can start picking up your salary at that point. Rachel, so don't feel too scared that you won't be able to raise it. But we felt like we could do it, and we did, and we were able to raise a year's salary. And so we worked as missionaries basically for the first year here at Church of the Highlands. That was 17 years ago, and have been here since, loving it.
So now you kind of been kind of like the two-man or kind of one of the leads there. So will that strategy work for you today as you're hiring? I
think it's still a good strategy for a brand new church plant. Obviously, a church that has grown and become established has the resources to pay for its number two man or its high level leaders. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think it should be used as a strategy just for the church to save money. But for us, it was a strategy of pure existence. I think we raised a salary of $28,000 for a year. We were living on bare bones. I had a pregnant wife when we moved here and a 2-year-old, and we delivered our second, probably a month after we got here.
Wow.
For the first year, but well worth it.
Wow. Now another thing I talk about is kind of like knowing that you're called, and so you just felt the calling to go help Pastor Chris. You just kind of.
I feel like God builds His kingdom relationally, not locationally. Okay. I think God calls the leader to a location, but He calls the rest of the people to a leader. So I wasn't called to Birmingham. I wasn't called to Alabama. I was called to Chris Hodges. Yeah. He was the one that was called to Birmingham. If he would have shared the story of planting a church in Omaha, Nebraska, I would be living in Omaha. If it was in New Jersey, I'd be living in New Jersey. I was called to him, and I believe that's the way God works. You see all throughout Scripture, he calls people to people. Right. But He will call the leader, the top leader, He will call them to a location.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. Man, have you read my book already? Because
I have not.
Plagiarizing. No, that's it. So I asked you the question, kind of to you, what was a two-man or a woman? Because it's not gender specific when I say two-man. That is a man or a woman who serves an executive support leadership role. And so you said y'all don't really have a two-man structure. Kind of tell me, what's your leadership structure like at the Church of the Highlands?
Yeah, I think every church structure should be a structure that supports its senior leader and their gifting. So Pastor Chris Hodges is he's a CEO in the way God made him. He is a great organizational leader. He loves between Sundays. He loves the operations. He loves leading people. He loves decision making. He loves the business side of things, loves the systems, the structure, whereas a different type of leader or pastor might not like any of those things and might really prefer to stick with vision and messages and messaging. And so we're just arranged in a way that supports his leadership. So basically every staff member, up until we were about 30 staff and several thousand people. So there's really never been two. I guess I was a number two when it was just me.
Yeah.
But as we added staff, we all reported to Pastor Chris. And then it was about that time our church was about to move into its first building. We were multi-site by then, and he knew, he couldn't just keep leading everybody. So we initiated at that point in 2007 a executive leadership team.
Okay.
That some people call it a directional leadership team or a lead team, or we're not big on titles here, but it was basically a team of people that would run the church that would report directly to him. And so that's been in place now for basically 10 years and has been adapted. I think there were 6 of us on that team at the beginning. There has been, one added a couple years later and another added a couple years later. So we were at 9 for several years, and that team has now become our staff elders. And we have now shifted recently into an operational team because we wanted to get some of our younger leaders in the room that were leading key areas of the church. So really now we have the elders for spiritual leadership, and we're still that same 9 people. But operationally, we've added another, I believe, 4 people. So there's about 13 people in that meeting that run the church.
Okay. Yeah. I was down there a couple of months ago for the round table, man, just to sit with your team and just like, man, they just blowing my mind in terms of from what's the guy's name that kind of does the stewardship?
Lead domain.
Lead domain, man, fantastic. That guy is incredible, man. Him, some of the young people that you had that were kind of giving us operation. So, man, you guys are doing fantastic. One of the questions I asked you, I said, what makes a great 2-man or woman to you? And you said something. So I interviewed 2 men all over the country, and I got different responses, and I kind of used that to kind of formulate some of my ideas for the book. But in your response was so unique that I quoted you in the book, and I said, okay, this right here should be a book by itself. So I am promoting your book in my book, and you don't even have to. But I want you to talk about it because you said something that was totally different and really hadn't heard it. So kind of explain this whole idea of an heir.
Yeah, I think the principle that makes a great number 2, or any staff member for that matter, but especially a number 2 or executive leader, the principle is called sonship in the scriptures. And so the whole idea being that we're sons and daughters, that we are not employees, we're actually heirs. And in Colossians 3, the scriptures talk about our inheritance. In Romans chapter 8 says we are his heirs, we are co-heirs with Christ. And Galatians chapter 3 talks about it. And so in biblical terms, they would some of those scriptures talk about being a slave or a servant. In our language, in our culture, we would say an employee. Okay. And so the way I teach it to our staff is that we need to operate as heirs, not employees. That we're thinking differently, we're acting differently, and we're speaking differently because our heart is different. And I believe we can actually do the same exact job, and we will not receive an inheritance in heaven if we are going at it for the wrong reason. So if I show up at work so I can get a paycheck from Church of the Highlands,
good,
rather than invest in the kingdom and see treasures in heaven, my heart is messed up. So I'll go through the motions. Yes. I'll do the same work as the people next to me are doing, but I'm going to lose out on the reward because I'm motivated. I'm earning a reward called a paycheck, and they're earning a reward in heaven because they're operating as heirs. And I feel passionate about this because of my background, and why I called myself a tow truck driver is my dad started a towing business when I was 2 years old. He bought a tow truck and made my mom answer the phone 24/7 and built a business. As I grew older, that company got larger, and all I wanted to do was drive tow trucks. I just wanted to be like my dad.
Yeah.
And he's old school, like many of those that are watching this have old school parents. And so he didn't want me to have any special treatment. He didn't give me anything. I had to work for everything. So I had the worst jobs in the company. I had to clean the toilet at the tow truck shop, which is worse than you could imagine. I would have to change the brakes on the tow trucks while the other guys were out towing cars making money. I was fixing their truck.
Mm.
But I always had the best attitude. Why did I have the best attitude even though I had the worst jobs? It's because at some point I was going to be the owner. I'm going to be their boss. So I saw a longer, bigger picture. So I didn't really care that I had the worst jobs. I didn't care that I had the bad, positions. And my dad wouldn't pay me hardly anything. I think there are labor laws that have been enacted since the 80s when he was making me work as a 12-year-old, and so he didn't even hardly pay me. But I didn't care because someday I knew that whole company would be mine. I had a better attitude than the other employees because someday I felt like I would be their boss. And so I lived in that business full time for 12 years, and I was operating as an heir, not as an employee.
Love it.
And I've carried that into ministry. 17 years at Church of the Highlands has not been easy.
Mm-hmm.
Ministry comes with pain. You know that.
Right.
And if anybody watching this has been in ministry more than a couple of weeks, they know that. And
right.
And the painful days are so much easier to get through if you're operating as an heir, not as an employee.
That is so good. So let me just say some of the stuff you said. You said heirs are family first. Heirs are honest. Heirs grow. So I'm just going to stop there.
Yeah.
Pick one and just expound on one of them. Just give us a little nugget. What you mean by one of those?
Well, I mean, there are always issues in church, in ministry, in employment. Like no matter where you work, you're going to have issues with people. And I had issues with my sister growing up. We always had issues. We would fight like cats and dogs.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, she was my sister.
That's right.
Don't you talk about my sister? Don't you hurt my sister? Like, don't you steal? Like I would have done anything to defend her because family was bigger than the issue. And so in ministry, so many of us let issue get bigger than family because we're not family. We're just employees. So then we're just going to find the next church that we think is not going to have that issue, which they're going to have that issue. I promise you. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to just look at it differently. So I'm committed to Pastor Chris and Church of the Highlands, just like I'm committed to my sister. That's covenant. That's blood. It's not going to change. The issues aren't going to change it. Bad days aren't going to change it.
That's good.
I mean, that's what family first is.
Layne, how do you apply? Because a lot of my followers. So as you know, I am executive pastor at Change Church with Darius Daniels, and that's my spiritual father. That's why I serve. I've been an entrepreneur for probably 20 years, kind of running my own company. A lot of my followers are on here. Some are in the church world, some are not. Some are just in corporate. Some work in the education field or whatever. How does some of those principles apply? Because I believe kingdom principles apply to everywhere. How would you say some of those principles would apply to even someone who's not working in a church sector per se?
Oh, I think they work even better because I think there's less sonship out there. And so people that are in the secular workplace that can live with sonship principles and a mindset where issues aren't going to cause them to quit. They're not going to cause them to be disloyal to their manager or their executive leadership or their CEO. They're going to be honest, so they're not fearful to be transparent. They're going to always grow. Sons are always growing. They're getting older. They're getting more mature. They're getting stronger. They're getting better at what they do. To list some of the things that you just listed. So those things help because they're biblical principles. They apply perfectly in the secular environment, maybe to even more success.
It's great. It's great. Fantastic. So Layne, let me just kind of slide in here for a second. People who want to learn more from you. I know y'all have so many different channels where people can learn. I'm connected to, I believe, all of them. But tell people if they want to kind of hear more from you, learn more about your church, learn more about Grow and Arc and all the different things. Kind of talk about some of the different ways that they could follow you and connect.
Yeah, so I don't really have any resources myself. I'm encouraged a lot, just like you, to write things, and I don't have a blog. I haven't written any books, but for following purposes, it's at Layne Schranz on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. It's LayneSchanz. And then really what I love the most is helping equip pastors, and we do that at Highlands through Grow, which is growleader.com. And free to jump on that and get resourced and get training and basically have access to everything at Church of the Highlands. Every document we use, everything we have, we give away for free through growleader.com.
Man, and that site is fantastic. I'm typing it inside of Facebook so people can
great,
come back and watch it. So that Grow Leader, man, it is fantastic. I feel guilty half the time. Like we staff me, and I'm like, oh, let me go here and grab this and use it and change it and put our name on it or whatever. I feel guilty, but tell us the vision, the passion behind that, because you guys.
The vision and the passion is to help the local church, and so we give it all away for free, and we put it all in Word document form, so you can put your logo on it, your wording in it, edit it, change it, own it, tell people you came up with it. We don't care. It's doesn't belong to us anyways. It belongs to Jesus. So give it all away.
I love it. So Grow is one. The conference. Now you guys host really two major conferences. It may be more, but two that I'm very familiar with. That's one under the Ark, and then the one that's coming up in July. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we, as I said earlier, we're an Ark church. We were Ark church plant number 1A or 1B. We planted with Rick Bizette planting in Little Rock, Arkansas, New Life Church on the same day. Okay. And it was an experiment of a new way of planting churches that actually worked. And now we've planted over 750 churches in the last 17 years. So that's the Ark. So we are an Ark church. So that's arkchurches.com. And that's ARC because it stands for the Association of Related Churches, arcchurches.com. And anybody can jump into that and invest money in that and plant more churches. So we will continue to plant churches. It's probably the most return on our investment with our missions dollars is we give 2% of our income to the Ark to plant more churches. Mm-hmm. We have hosted the Ark conference the last couple of years. We will host it to be a part of the Ark wherever that conference goes. So that conference is not fixed at Highlands. The first one was at Highlands, 16 years ago, but it's moved around and it'll move again in 2020, I believe. It will go somewhere else. So it'll be at Highlands next spring in 2019, I believe in April. And then our conference that we are responsible for and we lead ourselves is just to train pastors. We don't even call it a conference. We call it a leadership intensive. And that's called Grow. And that's the last day of July, the first 2 days of August. And unfortunately, we sold out in about 4 hours. So we have over 4,000 pastors coming. And it sold out several months ago. But that is a 2.5-day intensive. Yeah. There are no guest speakers. There are no vendors trying to sell you their software or their insurance or their missions endeavors. There's nobody in the buildings other than the pastors that are coming to learn how Highlands does church. There are over 60 labs offered from every department, so you can learn departmentally what we do. And Pastor Chris does 6 main sessions, I believe, and teaches, and it's amazing.
Yeah. last year was there. I was telling, well, no, it wasn't last year. Whenever I brought our whole staff down, and it was so fantastic. Our staff came back, was like, they literally had tags on the wicker baskets and where they got it from, the computer equipment, the screens. I was like, hands down, it was great because people could literally walk into, see what y'all are doing, and y'all tagged everything to tell them this is the vendor that we got it from.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fantastic, man. Fantastic. But listen, man, I'm not going to keep you long. One of the things I talk about in the book, a chapter, is called The Challenges of Two. And I talk about this thought, what about me? What about me? And I hear this so much, but what about my vision? What about the things that God put inside my heart to do and da-da-da? Now, I know for you outside of all the stuff you do, I heard you're a pretty good driver as well. So tell me a little bit, how do you do all the things that you do, but yet still have the passion and find your way to do race car driving? Talk to me about that.
Well, I wasn't expecting this, but because I grew up in the towing business, and my dad not only started a tow truck company, he also started racing cars up Pikes Peak, the mountain actually. Like there is a road to the summit, and they've been racing up that thing for over 100 years. And so he started doing that when I was a kid. So I wanted to drive tow trucks and race cars, just like the movie Cars. My life growing up was about Mater and McQueen. And I fortunately have been able to continue to do that race. So this year, June 24th, will be the 25th year that I've raced up the Pikes Peak Hill Climb. And the way I can keep doing it is that it's only one Sunday a year. So obviously I couldn't be a race car driver, 30 weekends a year. So it's something I get to do on a very part-time basis.
Okay.
I call it my annual hunting trip. I'm not a hunter, I'm not a golfer, like many pastors, but I think about it for a year. I plan for it for a year. I go spend a week in Colorado and compete in the race, and then I have another year to plan for it and think about it again.
Okay. Well, now you say you're not a hunter. Now we just did a tour of y'all new building, your office. So I was in your office. I think I was trying to Skype you or FaceTime you when I was in your office.
Yeah.
You weren't there a couple of months ago. Now hunting, I went in everybody else's office. It's like deer heads, moose heads. It's like everything.
That's right. This is what's in my office right here.
Yeah, man. But the rest of the office, man.
And a little bit of this too. I'm from Colorado, so I gotta shout out to my
Broncos. All right. Well, hey, listen. Great segue to bring this to an end. Ask you one question I ask everybody when I do these two-man talks. Tell me great two men in history. We can go in sports. It might be the quarterback was the one, the receiver will be considered the two, or the quarterback and running back, or basketball. Or talk to me. Give me some great two men in history in your.
Oh, come on, man. What would John Elway have been without Terrell Davis, baby? Come on.
Okay. All right.
So I'll give it to Terrell Davis.
All right. Terrell Davis. Give me one more. Give me a two-man. It can be in any arena. It can be sports. It can be business. It can be education. Any two-man. Give me two more.
I'm going to give you three at one church.
All right.
And so that would be, of course, lifechurch.tv is the largest church in our country. And I truly love and honor and thank Sam Roberts, Jerry Hurley, and Bobby Grunwald, all on the executive team with Pastor Craig. And those three guys run that church for him. And they're all amazing number twos. And I'm thankful for their influence in my life. And those are guys that all of us can learn from.
All right, man. Well, Layne, I appreciate you, man. Fantastic. Keep doing what you're doing, man. You are an inspiration to me. You're a role model to me. We watching you from afar. Keep doing it, man. You're doing a great job.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah, love you, man. Take care.
Love you too.
All right.
My honor.
Okay. Bye-bye.